Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what God has been teaching me throughout these 4 years at the university. These are little snippets. There's like a ton that I could go on, but I had a time limit, so. Upon deciding I wanted to come to the University of Findlay, price was a question at hand because, as we all know, it's very expensive. And I remember saying to my mom, just have faith, it'll all work out. And it turns out that's all I needed, because God provided enough scholarship money that I could be here and stay here for these 4 years. His provision was very evident, and I had no doubt this is where I was meant to be. But this was only the beginning of the journey we're about to embark on. At the end of my first semester, during finals week, I found out my little sister had brain cancer. I remember that night like it was yesterday. I was attending a Bible study with friends, and it was the first time I had been to this particular Bible study. There were people to pray for me and for her and my family of the news we just learned. And later that night, after returning to my dorm, I remember trying to be quiet, but getting on my knees to cry out to God because I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how this happened. The community back at home and my community here came around us, and there was so much love. Praise God for all the love that we had. I knew that God could pull her through, and He was the only one that could do so. So on her 14th birthday, she started chemo. She went through different treatments of chemo and radiation, as well as some surgeries. I don't recall her complaining of pain, and quite frankly, I don't recall her complaining at all. It was around this time I had been thinking I didn't want to be a vet anymore. I saw how much the nurses cared for my sister and my family, and today I'm about to graduate with my nursing degree. I was inspired to give back just a little of what they were doing for my family and sister, and I had been instilled with a passion to care for others. In the spring of 2015, my sister had a surgery to remove a tumor that had taken her sight. God seemed to be pulling her through well. What could go wrong? A lot. She had a stroke during the surgery, and the pituitary gland was touched, which left her with what is called diabetes insipidus. So instead of sugar, it's your sodium. The sister I knew growing up had drastically changed. She was now left with physical and cognitive deficits, and my parents had to try to figure out how to control this diabetes insipidus. I had many more questions for God, but still had faith that He could do the impossible. These deficiencies lasted for years, and we had to figure out what new normal was. Now, I did get into the nursing program, and I have an extra story to tell, which emphasizes a little bit more of God's providence throughout all of this. My sophomore year is when we got in, and I got in and went through my first semester, was doing really well, and on my final, I got a 73, and you need a 75 to pass the class. I was pretty upset and embarrassed, and I remember talking to my now husband and telling him how I didn't know what we could do, but that somehow God had a plan. So that night I wrote a prayer and put it under my pillow. And I said, God, I don't know where you want to take me, but I'll go wherever you go. The next morning I had an email from my professor. He showed me my test. I was above a 75. I had bonus points in the class, and he put them on there. I thank God that He kept me through going to where He wants me to be. And I have no doubt that this was His plan all along. He provided so much. Continuing on with these effects that my sister had, all around me, people were being healed from their cancers or sickness, and my sister's was changed, left with the negative effects of what she went through. found it hard to be joyful even with the providence God had. And I found it hard to be joyful with others at the great things that God had done for them when my sister, although the cancer was cleared, was suffering. I still had hope that God could do the impossible, and this is when I found the passage of John 9. We move forward to 2018. This past spring, the Thursday before Easter, I received a call. My sister went into septic shock and things looked really grim. I traveled to see her, and by the time I got there, in the ER she had started opening her eyes, but there was still much improvement needed. The first night was terrifying, and all I could think was to pray to God, please save her. Through the weekend she progressed and was slowly weaned off of the many medications she was on, and eventually they were able to take the tube out, and she was weak but able to start doing things. And at this time now, she is in a rehab hospital for some therapy. This passage of John 9 has provided much comfort to me, especially when I was struggling with the questions I had for God before this hospitalization and now. The disciples want an explanation for what caused this man to be born blind. Was it his parents' sin or his sin? But Jesus gives a third option. Jesus responds, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. It's true, we live in a sinful and very broken world, but God has not lost control, and he continues to work so many wonders before our very eyes. Wonders that don't always include healing. Sometimes his answer are endurance through the trials. And sometimes his answers are providing, and sometimes his answers are healing. And there are so many things that God has opened my eyes to now. That though my sister is not healed like I want her to be, and though I will never stop praying for her to be healed, she's alive, and God has a purpose for her. The works of God are a purpose for her life. She's here for a reason, and I believe God has given her the endurance to get through the trials that she is going through and has gone through. I thank God that he has kept her, that I might be able to learn from her so much. And I hope that all those around her have learned so much. Because if you've ever met my sister, you'll know that she's a little bit sassy, but she also has an ever-present smile and is joyful, even though life for her kind of sucks. And I believe that that is a work of the Spirit, and I thank God so much. One song that has kept me going to recently, the chorus goes like this, you may know it. It says, I know you're able, and I know you can, save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow, and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. We have hope because Christ paid the ultimate price. Christ died so that we might live, and he suffered because we sinned. So I thank God for Jesus coming down to save us. And that gives me hope for the future, for whatever God has planned. Then I know he has a purpose for the future, a purpose for the trials we go through today, and a purpose through the trials we go through tomorrow. That our past sins don't correlate with our present suffering, but that there's a purpose, and God knows. He went through it because he came down as a man and suffered so that we might live. So I come to you today telling you I don't have all the answers and I don't know the purpose. But what I do know is that no matter where I go, God is in control and he knows where I'm going. He knows where my sister will go. He knows where my parents will go. He knows where each and every one of you is going to go. And he has a plan for your lives. This has taught me a lot about what it means to truly trust in God, especially when we're in despair and don't understand. I still have questions that I'd like to ask God, and I'd want to know the answers right now. But it's okay, because He's in control. And I've met a lot of people that have helped reinforce this in my life, and I'm so thankful for those people. So all in all, no matter where you go, remember that the Lord has a plan for your life, and that even if He doesn't take away your suffering, like He didn't take away Paul's thorn, it's okay. He's got it under control, and He knows what He has planned for you. And in the end, one day, Jesus is coming back. We already know Jesus wins, and He's going to set everything right. And we will be rejoicing with no tears or no pain and no suffering. So I pray that throughout your walk with Christ and throughout your life, you might be open to what God and His works are. That even though they might not be what you want, that He would be open to what God has in store. Thank you.